One of the things that holds a lot of people back is the belief that they are not creative. We're all much more creative than we believe. As one of the basic prosperity proclamations in Money Love puts it, I have an unlimited number of valuable ideas in my consciousness. How creative do you believe yourself to be? Rate yourself as a creative person on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. There are two issues here. One is how creative you are. The other is how much of your creativity do you use? Are you using the creativity you already know you have in the work you do, in your life? Some of the negative ideas about creativity that hold people back are the belief that you have to be artistic or musical or literary to be creative. Creative energy doesn't have a form. It exists within you to be used in whatever expressive form you choose, whether it be painting a landscape, fixing a car, selling a product to a customer, choosing a vacation activity. Another idea that people hold on to is that creativity is the same as intelligence. Not true. Some people with little intelligence, at least by our standard tests, have been very creative, though of course intelligence may help to focus your creativity. On the other hand, it may get in the way. Many intelligent minds tend to conform, and conformity is the enemy of creativity. Creativity is not logical and rational, and many people have been trained to be rational, logical people. An untraining process may be necessary to activate that potential creativity. The worst thing you can do for creativity is to demand that all your ideas make sense. Brainstorming and free association are the best ways found to come up with ideas, and in this kind of effort, it is much better to be silly than to be safe. An exercise to give yourself, for example, is to come up with 100 things you could enjoyably do instead of working tomorrow. Think about that. 100 things you could do instead of working. Let your mind wander, and if you have trouble coming up with 100 items, give it another chance in a week. Give it another shot even if you can come up with 100 alternatives to work. You may come up with a second 100 next week. And among these may just be something you never thought of before, something you can make good use of. An idea may be born that can be put into action if you freely let your imagination guide you, like a housewife named Ruth Handler did some years ago. Her 10-year-old daughter seemed to prefer playing with paper dolls representing teenage girls, dressing them up, and so forth. She seemed to prefer this to playing with three-dimensional dolls depicting younger children. Now, some mothers may have gotten angry, saying something like, "Why are you playing with those silly paper dolls when I spend good money buying this beautiful doll that cries and says, 'Mama'?" Not Ruth Handler. She wondered instead why no one had ever designed a three-dimensional teenage doll with a shape. So she did, and she named it for her daughter, Barbie. The rest is history. Ruth Handler became head of the giant Mattel toy company, and later in life, having retired from Mattel, Ruth had breast cancer surgery, and she wondered again, this time why so many artificial breasts were unshapely and uncomfortable, so she designed a brand new one called Nearly Me, and another fortune was born, and they're sold in department stores all over the world. Creativity is not necessarily making a fortune or writing a symphony. Sometimes it's expressed in small ways, like the optician who increased goodwill and probably increased his business with a sign that read, "If you don't see what you want, you're in the right place." Or a sign I saw in a Midwest bookstore in the used book section, it read, "Experienced books for sale." Think about that. So simple and so true. They are experienced books. They're not used books. What about someone starting an experienced book club? With the increasing prices of hardcover books today, it seems a pretty profitable and popular idea. Something else that gets in the way of creativity is falling in love with your ideas, so that you're not willing to let go of one that doesn't work. This ego involvement can cause you to lose perspective. When I teach creative writing, I often say that the best thing to do when looking over your work is to take the thing you really love the most and cut it out. It's a very good discipline, and quite often it makes for a much better article, story, or book. Creativity doesn't demand any skill, though skill may be needed to put the ideas into action. The actual process of creating seems to be a natural function of the human brain, and in children it flows forth quite naturally and abundantly. So perhaps being creative is being in touch with the childlike sense of wonder in yourself. And that childlike sense of curiosity. Curiosity, a very important part of creativity. When is the last time you were so curious about something that you just had to find out more? Think about that. Children start to shut down their creativity when they begin to get afraid of being different, of making a mistake. I wasn't terribly well coordinated as a child, and therefore I wasn't willing to try out for a lot of sports or get out on the dance floor and risk taking a clumsy step. My creativity was limited in those adolescent years, and all of us haven't done some things out of fear. One way to become more aware of this is to make a list of all the things you'd like to do but haven't done. Look at what fear might be blocking you in this area, and whether the fear is in any way justified. An exercise that has been most successful for me, and for many people attending my seminars, allows you to tap your creative reservoir at the best possible time. For in the 10 minutes or so before falling asleep, and the 10 minutes just after waking up, your brain is producing theta brainwaves, a brainwave pattern highly visual and very much associated with creativity. If you take these 2 10-minute periods and either write ideas down or talk them into a small tape recorder, you'll find the quality of those ideas highly creative, and you can use them to stimulate your thinking at other times during the day. This is tuning into your right brain, your intuitive brain. Another way to experiment with this is to write some thoughts down spontaneously using your left hand if you're right-handed, and your right hand if you're left-handed. By using your non-dominant hand, you bypass some of the logical, rational brain processes, and you might just surprise yourself with the results. Try it. The person who appreciates his or her creativity also always keeps a tape recorder or pen and pad handy when asleep, and is ready to jot down ideas coming up in dreams if he or she awakens briefly in the middle of the night. You are already producing a fountain of valuable ideas that are getting lost because you are not catching them. The creative mind sees connections in all sorts of things, taking an idea from one source and connecting it to another. For example, the success of an all-night quick copy shop in San Diego, taking the idea of quick copy popularity with the equal popularity of all-night restaurants and markets. What other services could be provided all night? Perhaps some sort of business where you could go to the owner and offer to run the business the 12 or 15 hours it's usually shut down, thus avoiding the need for overhead and giving the business owner profits which would otherwise probably be lost. Once you let your mind go, you could probably come up with much better ideas on the same theme. Try it. Something that could be a business operating 24 hours a day, some new area of originality in using this already popular theme of all-night businesses. The need to conform certainly gets in the way of creativity, as does the need to be perfect. A perfectionist is never creative, because in order to do something perfectly, you have to do it the way it's always been done, so that everyone will think you're doing it perfectly. Perfection is the antithesis of creativity. Another obstacle to creativity is inappropriate motivation. If you are not strongly motivated, or if you don't have a good reason to come up with ideas, you won't. A tendency some people have to judge all their ideas also gets in the way. as well as an intolerance for chaos. I have a lovely cloth banner hanging in my work area which says, "A creative mind is rarely tidy." Creativity thrives in chaos, and if you are biased against chaos, you may be limiting your imagination. Again, logical, neat thinking can be useful, but it can get in the way of your creativity. The belief that play is for children only can also keep you from making the most of your creative potential. Creating, at its best, is playing. The best ideas come out of a playful unleashing of the creative mind. The belief that some people have that fantasy and daydreams are bad, useless, get in the way of productivity, is one of the big enemies of creative thought. Daydreams are ideas coming forth, and many great discoveries and business ideas came out of daydreams. And perhaps the worst obstacle to creativity of all is embracing the commandment, "Thou shalt try nothing new." The fascinating thing about creativity is that you don't have to be original. You can take someone else's idea and improve upon it, or adapt it in your own unique way. Anastasios Kyriakides is a great example of this. Here was a Greek immigrant having difficulty learning English. Now, he looked at a pocket calculator, and he asked himself, why couldn't this be used to translate language as easily as to compute numbers? Well, by the time dozens of people told him why it couldn't be done, he had a patent, and he's now the multimillionaire owner of the company that produces the Lexicon handheld pocket translating calculator. Kyriakides had an important positive message programmed into his subconscious mind, which no doubt helped support his creative drive. His mother told him that America was the land of opportunity, and he believed it. Did your folks tell you this is the land of opportunity? Or were you told instead how hard it is to get ahead today, how important it is not to take chances? Despite the fact that there are more millionaires than ever today, and it's never been safer to take chances. One of the factors necessary for the free expression of ideas is a sense of psychological safety. If you have a healthy self-image, then no matter how silly, strange, or crazy your ideas may appear to others, you know you're worthwhile. This was one of the attributes discovered by Dr. Abraham Maslow, pioneering American psychologist who first came up with the idea of self-actualized people, those who are using their human potential to the utmost, including such people as Thomas Edison and Albert Einstein. They were immune to criticism because they firmly believed in what they were doing and in their eventual success. Thus the ideas just poured out. They had created their own psychological safety. By the way, while on the subject of Maslow, what a genius he was in coming up with such a simple switch in using his creative imagination. Up until Maslow, psychologists spent all their time studying sick people, unhealthy people, people with mental disturbances. And Maslow said, why don't we study healthy people? People who are successful, people who have little or no neuroses. And he called them self-actualized. Sometimes the most brilliant, life-changing ideas are the very simplest. The experts in creativity say there is a simple formula to creating ideas and coming up with solutions. First, you must define the situation or problem, and then you gather together all the available information and come up with a number of solutions. And then you take time to rest and relax, and this is an important step. Rest and relax. Allow the ideas to mature in your subconscious mind. You let go of the problem and allow your subconscious mind to do the work. And then you evaluate the idea or the ideas that pop up, and the ones that seem workable, and the ones that feel good to you. For example, let's imagine that the situation or problem involves your wanting more time for yourself each day. You gather together all the available information, which in this case might include looking at those ways in which you are currently using your time, some of the things we talked about in the last program. And you come up with a number of solutions. Now, one might be to get up an hour earlier or go to bed an hour later. Another might be to cut out some of your social activities or cut out a meal or find a better way to do some routine chore so you save time. And when you come up with many solutions, simply relax. Let it all come together in your subconscious mind. And then check out the solution that feels best. What solution, for instance, would make you feel happy, proud, inspired, worthwhile? Perhaps one of your solutions might make you feel guilty, so obviously that's not the most workable answer for you. Let's take a look at how one of the most imaginative, creative people I know solves that particular problem: finding more time. Ray Bradbury. He told me, "I've gotten rid of lunches from a good part of my life in the last 15 years, which means I've given myself an extra hour and a half every day where I'm not giving my energy away to people who don't appreciate it to start with." Stay away, he says, from people a certain part of the day and make sure that time belongs to you. Eliminate these ridiculous lunches where you talk all your ideas out instead of creating them. And Bradbury finishes by saying, "If you're not careful, you'll give away your whole life."